diving into deep, insightful topic. You can't fix the world, and it's okay.
So, with that, we are talking about judgment pretty much. We tend to judge, and it's normal, it's natural for us humans to do so. But people often don't realize the details of how well we do this. How well we do this, because oftentimes we judge just naturally. But we presume sometimes that we don't. We try so hard not to, and we think we allow things to happen. We think, we accept people for what they are, race, color, religion, all these things. But innately in us, we're just naturally judging all the time because we need to find which is better to do things. So just to simplify things, we tend to group things good and bad and things like that. So why we want to talk about it today is really to really fine tune how we judge and how to recognize that we do so.
Well, it's also more of we want to help, right? We're going from a positive, but in truth, at times we end up judging.
Right.
That's how it's kind of like we're coming from a positive, but it ends up something else.
Right. Like sometimes we overdo what we're trying to intend. Like we want the best for someone else, like say our children, our friends, our family, our fathers, our mothers. Like we just want them to be better, and sometimes we try to push it onto them and control the narrative, and they just need to change and they'll be much better,
Right.
kind of thing, right? When is that really our role? Do we do that? Are we supposed to do that? And how far do we do with that? So I think it goes to the imbalance of overhelping. We overhelp and unintentionally, like Sophia says here, that we just sometimes cause more trouble than we do help. What's that phrase? Hell is paved with good intention. The path to hell is paved with good.
Yes.
Right. Like you mean to do well, but you're actually causing all this trauma and karma. So
because in reality, we don't know. I don't know what's right for you, and you don't know what's right for me, because we each have our own path. I have an idea of what I think should be.
Right. I mean, it's so hard to tell these days. We constantly have these narratives that we're brought up with, like, this is how you're supposed to act, this is what you're not supposed to do, this is what you're supposed to do. But then when things don't go a certain way, you don't do it the right way, or what they say is right or wrong. And it becomes a situation, and then you see these patterns, and you just start judging. It just happens. So what do you think, Sophia, what do you think it stems from? Like, when does it start to become a thing in our life? Like, why do we do that?
I think it very much it's cultural. So I'm sure in Asian culture, same as Russian culture, what grown-ups say, and I'm sure it's basically any culture really, what grown-ups say is it, right? And grown-ups have an idea of how your life should be. So in my family, it was a must. You go to college, you go to school, you go to college, and you need a profession. It's a lawyer, it's an accountant, right? It's a doctor, right? It's a profession. So if there's anything outside of those, you will be judged, right? But not in what way? You're not accepted. It's more of not accepting you. Not because you're not loved, but those are not the parameters. So I feel like we learn it from very young age that's how it should be. We learn from our parents that they know better than we do. Therefore, they will tell us what to do. But then we learn how to do the same to our children.
True.
Or if we have friends that we feel are not as, I don't want to use the word smart, but don't know life as well as you do, for example, right? So automatically that sort of becomes a parent child relationship in a way, because I'm teaching you how to live, right? And I will tell you how to live.
And again, I think it's from a space of intentionally doing well and good for the other person. I think intentionally, like, oh, we learned something great. Just because we get to the point where we know it, like a certain information about how things should go in a pattern that tends to have a better outcome, doesn't necessarily mean that person got to that point yet, or will, and it's okay. It's just we happen to have gotten it sooner. But then we just presume everyone else sometimes see the same way we do when they didn't even experience it yet, or have that epiphany yet. So I think that's another aspect of how that kind of interplays. And also that's very much learned from childhood as well. I feel like the expectation that there's experts out there, so we got to listen to them first, and then when you finally get what they know, that now you're the expert, without being like given the diploma, the certificate of it. It's just like, oh, well, I know what they know, so I must know better than those who don't, so I have the authority to like direct this narrative.
And that's another judgment, right?
Yeah.
There's like layers of it. Right? And I think when we look at, let's say, relationships with our children, we see that the most.
Yeah.
Because I know what's best for you. Well, you really don't. We have an idea.
Yeah, we've been through some experiences that, might be a pattern to avoid, we might, but how do we share this information? Do we share it in such a way that our parents tend to have done it, where it's very authoritative, like, hey, you better listen to me or else? My mom used to say that to me, actually. She's like, you're going to regret not listening to me. You better listen to me. I'm like, but why, Mom? Like, give me the reasons. Like, oh, I don't like that guy. My dad said this to me once. I don't like that guy. I'm like, but why, Dad? Can you tell me why? Like, show me. Like, is there, I trust your judgment, because he's actually a real good judge of character. Like, just maybe teach me. But instead, it's just like, take my word for it. Or I think we even have these conversations with our significant others or friends and things, like, say one person go on a track, like say becomes a doctor or something, and then another one becomes like an engineer. I'm just picking random things here. And they're specialized in their own field, right? And then the other, say one is a parent, and they were both parents, obviously, but one is, let's say, the engineer. The engineer has done a lot of self-study on how to be parenting when it comes to like the medical health of their children, and is really, really, really honed on it, like constantly searching up different things, like Googling and not Googling, whatever they can find. But then the one that's in the medical field is like, well, I know better because you better listen to me because I just have the degree, but did nothing about parenting, nothing about like how it is for the child, this sort of thing. So he expects the wife to be like, you better listen because I know better. And if that person doesn't listen, now you feel like you're not heard, you're not valued for your worth, and all that. So then it becomes this judgment of each other, and it becomes something else. So
yes,
I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, how do we truly know? Because we're still judging, right? Just by telling the story, we're also judging. But how do we know? Because everyone has a different child, and maybe for that child, that parent works.
Yeah.
Right? So we really, truly don't know. And that's the idea, to just stop judging. Again, our mind will still do it. It's a matter of whether or not we will consciously stop ourselves. And even with children, right? With children, when we tell them, do this, right? We're not allowing them to have their own experience.
Right.
And a lot of times when I tell this to people or parents, and they'll say, well, I can't allow him to, put his hand in the fire. Who is saying he's putting, right? Our mind will go directly to something so horrific that it gives the mind an explanation of why I should micromanage my child's life, because God forbid he'll decide to put his hand in the fire. Most likely he won't, because he'll come close and he'll figure out that it's hot. Right?
I have many friends that have that, playground worry, constantly on their children when they're on the playground. It's like, oh no, don't do that, you're gonna hurt yourself. Oh no, you're gonna hurt yourself. Oh no, don't do that. And it becomes that helicopter parenting thing that we hear about, right? And when I see it, I often feel like it will happen, because that's how, like, you're putting in there in the situations, like, oh, you're gonna. I was like, okay, I guess I'll get hurt, in the subconscious of the child, even, like, or it's the other way. Like, I've seen the children who are actually very good at managing their bodies, and instead of like saying, get hurt, would it be better to be like, okay, before you do that, why don't we look a little clearer on our surroundings, instead of worrying about the hurt part, which is the result that might happen, versus like, oh, well, what is here? Oh, this is actually potentially very slippery, or this is super hot. Let's just be more careful in this moment because of that, be more aware. And we address it out of our own traumas, because we might have seen it happen a lot, or maybe we did it a lot, like we actually caused a lot of those things.
Or maybe we've heard our parents tell us the same thing. Well, you gotta be careful, right? So what does that really happen? So what happens to a child when the child grows up with that, hearing that, be careful, right? It's anxiety.
Yeah.
Because the child is learning to think ahead that something bad is going to happen.
Also, self-doubt. You're building self-doubt in that child, that their awareness is not aware enough. Like, it's not good enough that they are, maybe they were actively perceiving. Like my child, he's actually really good for the most part crossing the street or going into the parking lot, but my husband and I do it differently with teaching him that. Like, I kind of, now he's older, so I let him go first, and I'll let him, like, let me see how he processes it. Does he pause? Does he stop when he's, I pause first and let him do it first. But then my husband, he gets nervous. So he'll just go in like, oh, before he even gets near the curb, he's like, you're gonna park on. Look both ways. Look both ways. Be aware. Look at everything. That just the anxiety of him. I can imagine what my son would be experiencing in the moment. So, oh well, he's excited right now. What am I doing? It's like, and it's funny, actually, funny not funny, that when I see him around my husband, he's usually not paying attention, and he'll not pay attention to the road, not pay attention to anything when he's around. When I'm around, I think he feels secure enough to like think for himself. At least that's my perception. I don't know. I'm not a child psychiatrist, but it seems like he feels more safe to be able to be on his own mind and think for himself, versus like constant like talking, right?
Well, I think also it's the parent's anxiety that. So he's more focusing on his parents' anxiety rather than what the parent is saying or what they're doing. It's very distracting.
Right.
Because children feel things, right? They feel things. So they will feel that first and foremost. So that's very distracting.
Right.
And that's when you make even more mistakes, and the parent who's already anxious and be like, oh, I told you, pay more attention, right? And it becomes this like very unpleasant experience for both, really.
Right. It's just naturally cortisol is high, and you habitually recognize that level of cortisol in your body. Your body will react similarly, and as you go older and older, and you do this, and you do this around the people around you too. It's not just children and adults. It's people with people. It happens quite often.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how the triggers show up, right?
Absolutely. So we kind of do things because we're trying to help, be it our children or be it someone that we love. So let's look at things of, well, how do we know when we're overstepping, when we're doing too much help?
Yeah. So I would say, just like we've said before in the past, always be observant of your own actions and emotions and reactions. That will tell you how much you're putting into this space versus what's actually happening for the situation, I think. Like if you're overreactive internally, like, oh my gosh, that's something I need to worry about. That's something you need to worry about. That is less of the other individual, whether it's a child or an adult, whoever it is, pet.
Yeah.
You start imposing your ideas on them then, whether it's action wise or verbally. You start trying to direct, you're trying to control the situation. I think that's the biggest key, is to recognize there's the feeling there and then causing an action, and the action has to do with you trying to control the situation. So that what do you think, what is another sign for what you think overstepping might be?
I think for me, when I talk to someone, if I'm telling a person, well, do this, right? I'm like, I think I'm overstepping. Just of how I'm saying it. Because we're all very different. I pay attention to words a lot, or how I say things. So I'm very careful to, first of all, in my wording, be like, well, this is, first of all, I've learned how to right away ask, do you want me to just listen to you, whatever the issue is, or do you need an advice? I love that one. I heard that somewhere, I can't remember where, and I was like, I'm going to use that, because that is so interesting. And even when I started asking my child, right, sometimes he'll say, just listen, or sometimes, because maybe he's already trained, he's been with me for 10 years. He's like, no, mom, tell me what you would do, right? But but I say it in a way that I don't expect him to do the same. So I will say, this is what I would do. You can come up with your decision.
Right. That way that other person feels heard and recognized and self-empowered, really. Like they're able to freely share what they need to feel and share as well. Like, oh yeah, I do need some advice right now. Or yeah, they ponder it for a minute too. So I think that is a good tip right there. Yeah.
And don't forget that if we're not listening to ourselves, right? If we're constantly relying on someone else to tell us what to do, what does it do?
Yeah,
we are no longer
trained to do it.
Yeah, we're no longer listening to our inner voice. And we're not listening to our intuition. And it's in a way, the moment it doesn't happen right away. It takes time. Usually it's the whole time that we're growing up where we feel lost. Because the guidance is all in there, and that's when we feel very depressed. We start at the end, we feel depressed again because someone else told us what to be, right? And we went and we became that, but it doesn't work for us because it's not what you internally wanted, but you don't even know how to listen or to find it.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes very difficult to be yourself.
Yeah, you get devalued. You start learning to devalue yourself. You devalue your inner instincts and the value that, say, your parents wanted you to be a doctor your whole life just to be successful in the cultural aspect. Like, oh, you'll be better off, financially, this and that. But then your inner instinct is like, I just want to be like a musician because I love like sharing the music and like the people, and that just livens me up as an individual. But you talk yourself down like, well, that doesn't make sense. That's not success. That's not what's defined as success. So I'm lesser because I want that. I'm lesser because of these ideas, but that's not true. That's totally not true. But then because of that, you just start to mimic those things and those definitions of what success and love and all these ideas are. We're passing it on a narrative that someone else is putting out there, and most of it is not even actual people anymore. It's like it just hand-me-downs through culture and expectation, right? So when we go and overstep, we start to. The best thing to do now is just to like recognize it first. Say, maybe you spend a little bit. Actually, not even. I think with this one, it's so like hidden and subtle. I feel like there's another step before recognize it. I think you have to actually purposely create like an exercise for yourself every so often with this new awareness, or grow on this awareness more because you can always evolve from this. Like, pause, think about your actions, think about how people are around you, and how did I react? Was that controlling, or was that judgmental? Was that, a lot of people don't try to get to that space to evaluate that. So they don't even know what they're doing is judgmental. I think that also happens. Like, I think that happened with me once. I talked to a friend.
Once.
You got me. Many times. But this one time that stood out for me very impressionably was a close friend of mine at a later time, much later. It's not like when we were just, getting to know each other. Later, I realized she thought I was judgmental with her. And it shocked me. It took me back because I was like, I've never been judgmental. You do what? I love you for who you are. But the way that I presented myself and how, like I said, I want to do this for the environment, and you got to recycle, you got to do this for your health. And I was so adamant on like all these great changes to do, but I didn't do it in a nice way. I didn't do it in a way of like, well, if you want to do it, you don't have to. Mm-hmm. It's more like, oh, this is what we're going to do to save the world or whatever, kind of thing. And she thought, because she didn't do it as what she thought I was expecting, mm-hmm. she thought I would be like judging her that she did it wrong. And I never did that, but that's the perception. And it's all about the way we present what we know. The more we become more sensitive in a way of the other person's experience, like maybe what we're saying is a bit too jarring, too quick, too blunt. Maybe we need to be more addressing that, okay, this is what their perspective is, and be okay with it just being okay. And I mean, we get to the point where we do actually live it. Like sometimes some people will actually try to control the situation, right? Like control this narrative. And unintentionally, they start controlling the other people.
Yes.
In certain ways. And there's like, well, in order to get them to be better, they have to do this. There's no way about it. They just have to do this thing to resolve this thing. But is it your call to do so? Maybe it's not. Maybe they need to learn either that's true for them, or they have to learn that there's another way for them. That's okay, and that's their journey. They need to learn to suffer, not to suffer, more so
to learn, just to learn to experience, right?
Yeah, to learn to experience whichever way they need to.
Yeah, we're judging based on what we've been through, and you mentioned that before, and that person needs to experience it. And I find that sometimes it's difficult. Within me, I'm like, well, they could have done this, right? But I keep it in my mind. I don't say anything. Mm-hmm. So, and then I let it go by thinking everyone is on their own journey. Everyone mm-hmm. is on their own journey. And whenever they're ready, they'll come, they'll ask, they'll do. Same with children. Again, children are the ones that are picking up everything, right? But I feel like our job is to rather teach them how to listen to their inner voice rather than telling them what to do.
Right.
And it's a tough one.
It's tough. And it's also tough to just be the example.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like, that's like probably the best way to teach, but I think it's tough because we never fully feel like we live up to our own expectations. And we don't want to see it that way. We don't want to see, but because it's so different. Like we say what we know and it's like, oh yeah, that's the fact. But then if you were to like really look upon it, it's like, well, how much did I live that fact myself? Then it's like, then you start, either you judge yourself or you judge the other person. Either way is not valuable. It's recognizing that, okay, this is the way it is, and this is what I know because of these things. That's the fact. I gained this perspective because I've been through this. And if that other person wants to hear it, I invite them to hear it, not tell them to hear it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I like how you say I invite them to hear it and make a decision on their own rather than I'm telling you what to do. And then a lot of people will get upset if they tell you things or, and you don't do what they tell you to do.
Yeah.
And then again, you didn't do what they told you to do and you made that mistake that they've been warning you not to make. And then they get aggravated, like, well, I told you, right? Instead of being like, well, good job, you've
Yeah.
tried it, I'm proud of you,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's continuously being positive, continuously, that's okay, we're all just on a different journey.
Yeah.
And how exciting is it?
Right.
Because I remember my grandfather would always get upset and he will say, he's like, guys, I made all the mistakes for you, and I'll tell you all the mistakes that I've made so you guys don't have to make them. So I had to tell him once, I was like, listen, then we don't truly learn.
Yeah.
Right? We, as humans, we learn through making mistakes. And then even though you've told me 1,000 times, I still need to go through it in order to figure it out for myself.
Yeah. It's totally different experiencing versus hearing it from someone, or going to school, you're reading it in a textbook versus living it in real life later. Like, what's more impactful? What does it make more sense? Living it, experiencing it. So sometimes we do need to.
And as with what we do, right, we help people heal themselves. With what we do, a lot of the times, I don't know about you, but a lot of times I feel like, well, my God, if only you do this. But I keep my mouth shut. Because again, we have a desire to help. That's why we do what we do. But it's understanding that whatever the person is ready for is what they're able to do and nothing more. We can push as much as we can.
Right.
I've learned it many, many times. It feels like I still go through it because there's still the desire to help.
Yeah. It goes to that other idea where, like, we're always told, oh, walk in the other person's shoes, try to understand them, and then you'll get a better perspective of whatever. But no matter, there's an error in that way of thinking, in that there's no way you can be in exactly another person's shoes. There's no way. No matter how hard you try. You can try to be exactly like that person in every which way and try to learn about their whole life, but you cannot, because you've never been in the experiences that person's been through. So you don't know what led them up to who they are looking at you right now, talking to you and not understanding what you're saying. They might know some miraculous things that you don't get up to this point. You just see this moment in this one time in this conversation. Oh, that person, they don't get it. They're thick-headed or dumb, or it's like, no, it might be for that one situation in that moment, but maybe down the line they'll have this epiphany that is surpassing yours in your whole life. Like, you won't even know. They just need to go through the process. They need to take it slower than you, maybe, or whatnot. So,
or just a different road altogether. You got there this way, they'll get there this way. It doesn't matter. But it's allowing things to happen, allowing things to be.
Yeah. Well, at least we hope that what we're sharing here is helping to look at it a little differently, at least, because the more we let go of things, it helps us let go of control too. When we let go of control, we allow the beauty of things to come through as well. Like, we allow everyone to be more authentic to themselves, whether it's that person we're judging and not realizing we are, or ourselves when we're judging ourselves that we are doing well enough. So I think we kind of just need to step back and acknowledge all the progress we've done so far, as well as there's so much more to learn and so many different things to learn and so many ways and directions and timing. With that in mind, it's hard. I mean, it's a miraculous. We all know a lot of the same things in the lifetime, the time span that we are together. I think it's amazing we have a lot of things in common with understanding and belief systems, really. So, so with that, I think, I don't know, what do you all think about this? Do you feel like you have been overly judgmental in ways that you haven't perceived before?
Well, let's call it not overly judgmental. Let's call it, have you been trying to help people, right, who don't necessarily need your help? Let's just put it that way, because we don't truly know what people need. We might think, oh, she needs my help. She needs it. Well, maybe she doesn't. Maybe it's just your perception, right? Because I feel like we've all been victims, I'll call it victims, of thinking that we're needed when in truth we're not.
Yeah. We're just trying to control what we can control to feel safer. Everyone is going through that. We're all trying to be happier, safer, and acknowledged and be worthy.
Exactly. Feel needed, feel, yep, all of those feelings. Like sometimes we want to help others because that brings meaning to our life. Well, maybe you need to find a meaning within yourself rather than trying to find meaning in your life by helping others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know in the comments.
Well, thank you for your time again, and like and subscribe to us as usual, and we'll bring you more fun content.
Yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Bye.